Hey guys, this is Delphine with a Japanese lesson on the CultureQuirk channel. So the last lesson was the first part of the series about verbs, where I talked about the differences between the plain form and the polite form or the must form. Click here if you haven't seen that. And now we'll be learning how to switch from one form to the other. The process itself is very simple, but first I need to go over a new concept, which is how to categorize the verbs themselves. Each verb in the Japanese language belongs to one of three groups, which I'll refer to as classes. And a verb is conjugated differently based on what class it is. There are class 1 verbs, class 2 verbs, and class 3 verbs. Starting with class 1, this is the biggest group of verbs. I think most verbs probably belong here. Class 2 verbs are a little harder to pick out, but they always end in ru. Now there are lots of class 1 verbs that also end in ru, so how do you know which class it's in? Unfortunately, you're just gonna have to memorize them. In general, class 2 verbs end in eru or iru, if that helps. But again, there are some class 1 verbs that are exceptions to that and also end in iru or eru. So you're just gonna have to pick up over time which one are class 2. There aren't too many of them, so don't worry, just pay a little closer attention every time you see a verb that ends in ru and see if it's class 1 or class 2. Whereas if you see something that ends in u, ku, mu, and so forth, you know those are gonna be class 1. Class 3 only has 2 verbs in it, so it's really easy. One of them is suru, which means to do, and the other one is kuru, which means to come. These two words are just total exceptions when it comes to almost every kind of conjugation, so they're sort of in their own little category because they don't fit anywhere else. There's only 2 of them though, so it's not that big of a deal to just memorize them. So now we're going to switch those verbs from plain form to must form, and it works differently for every class. For class 1 verbs, they all end in that u sound, right? All you need to do is switch that u sound to its matching e sound, and then put mas at the end. So let's quickly go through examples for each sound. Au, aimasu. To meet. Kaeru, kaerimasu. To return. Matsu, machimasu. To wait. Shinu, shinimasu. To die. Nomu, nomimasu. To drink. Asobu, asobimasu. To play. Kaku, kakimasu. To write. Oyogu, oyogimasu. To swim. Hanasu, hanashimasu. To talk. Phew, so those are class 1. For class 2 verbs, instead of changing the ending, you just drop the do at the end, and then you add on the mas instead. So taberu becomes tabemasu, to eat. Miru becomes mimasu, to see. Now remember how there are class 1 verbs that also end in ru? This is why it's important to know the difference. Take tomaru, or to stop. It's a class 1 verb, so it becomes tomarimasu and not tomamasu. And likewise, the class 2 verbs like taberu doesn't become taberimasu, and miru doesn't become mirimasu. And then there's an example like kaeru. Depending on the kanji and the meaning, there are actually 2 words that are pronounced kaeru. One of them is a class 1 verb mentioned in the list before, and it's changed to kaerimasu, which means to return. And the other one is a class 2 verb, and so it would change to kaemasu, which means to change. So as you can see, it's very important to know about these different verb classes, because if you make a mistake, not only do you get it wrong, you could actually be using a whole other word by accident, which can be very confusing, so just be aware. So it's important to memorize which one's which. For most basic words though, you can pick this up really quickly. I mean, for me at this point, taberimasu sounds so ridiculous. I don't have to sit there and think about the fact that it's a class 2 verb when I'm conjugating. Just immerse yourself in the language and you'll pick it up. And now for class 3 verbs. And I'll just give them to you. Suru becomes shimasu and kuru becomes kimasu. Just memorize them. They're very common words, so it's worth doing it. And that is it. So there we go. We've gone over several different concepts so far. Just to review, we started out with the different verb forms. So plain form versus must form, which just refers to the level of politeness. And then we learned about verb classes, or how we categorize verbs. And in the next lesson, we're going to start talking about the different conjugations of verbs. So by that I mean past tense, negative tense, etc. As always, feel free to leave any questions in the comment section below. I hope you're enjoying this series on verbs, and happy learning!